Hello, fictional. Welcome to the crossover what ifs. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Rias, Akeno and Asia. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Naruto Uzumaki floated in a void of endless black, his mind reeling from the battle he had just endured. Kagaya Otsutsuki, the progenitor of all chakra, had been a formidable opponent, one unlike anything he had faced before. The battle had stretched his limits, pushing him and his comrades to the brink. But just when victory was within grasp, something went wrong. Kagaya, in a last-ditch effort to escape, had unleashed a technique Naruto couldn't understand, a swirling vortex of energy that had swallowed him whole. And now, he was here, wherever here was. He floated, weightless, his body tingling with a strange energy. He tried to move, to focus his chakra, but the more he struggled, the more he felt himself slipping away. His vision blurred, and a deep exhaustion settled into his bones. This isn't how it was supposed to end, Naruto thought, a sense of frustration gnawing at him. He had fought so hard, come so far, he couldn't let it end like this. But just as the last vestiges of his strength began to fade, a bright light pierced through the darkness. It was warm, inviting, and it called to him, pulling him out of the void. Naruto reached out, and the light enveloped him, filling him with a sense of peace. When the light faded, Naruto found himself lying on the ground, the sensation of cool grass beneath his fingertips. He blinked, adjusting to the sudden brightness of the sky above him, a clear, cerulean blue dotted with fluffy white clouds. It was serene, almost too peaceful after everything he had been through. Slowly, Naruto sat up, rubbing his eyes as he took in his surroundings. He was in a forest, though it was unlike any forest he had ever seen. The trees were taller, the leaves a vibrant shade of green that seemed almost unnatural. Birds chirped in the distance, their melodies unfamiliar to him. Where am I? He wondered, pushing himself to his feet. He did a quick check of his body, everything seemed intact, though his chakra felt different, weaker. His usual connection to the Kikbi felt distant, as if it had been muffled or suppressed. Before he could dwell on it, a rustling in the bushes nearby caught his attention. Instinctively, Naruto dropped into a defensive stance, ready for whatever might come. But what emerged from the bushes was not an enemy, but a girl. She was beautiful, with long crimson hair that cascaded down her back and striking blue eyes that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. She wore a school uniform, though it was unlike any he had seen before, a white blouse with black trim, a red skirt, and a matching bow. The girl's eyes widened as she saw him, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, as if remembering herself, she quickly straightened up and gave him a polite bow. "Hello," she said, her voice soft but clear. "My name is Rias Gremory. You're not from around here, are you?" Naruto blinked, taken aback by her sudden introduction. No," he replied, scratching the back of his head. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And no, I don't think I'm from here. Wherever here is." Rias tilted her head, studying him curiously. "Naruto Uzumaki, that's an unusual name. And your clothes," she gestured to his orange and black jumpsuit, which stood out starkly against the peaceful backdrop of the forest. "You don't look like anyone I've seen before." Naruto frowned, glancing down at himself. "Yeah, I guess I'm a bit out of place. But I don't really know how I got here." Rias nodded thoughtfully. "It's not every day someone like you just appears out of nowhere. But you're in the underworld, specifically in the territory of the Gremory family." "The underworld?" Naruto repeated, his frown deepening. "Like where devils live?" Rias smiled faintly. "Yes, exactly. But it's not as bad as it sounds. You're safe here, though I'm curious as to how you ended up in my territory." Naruto hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But something about Rias made him feel like he could trust her, at least for now. "I was fighting this crazy strong enemy, and I think she sent me here. I don't really know how or why." Rias considered his words, then nodded. "It sounds like you've been through a lot. You should come with me, I'll take you to my family's estate. We can figure out what happened and see if there's a way to get you back to your world." Naruto studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Alright. I don't really have any other options right now." Rias smiled warmly. "Good. Follow me." As they walked through the forest, Naruto couldn't help but feel a strange sense of deja vu. The situation was bizarre, to say the least, transported to a new world, meeting a girl who claimed to be a devil, but there was something familiar about Rias. It was as if he had met someone like her before, someone who carried a similar strength and warmth. Rias led him to a large mansion, its grand architecture both intimidating and beautiful. "This is the Gremory estate," she said as they approached the entrance. "I'll introduce you to my peerage, and we'll figure out our next steps." As the doors opened and Naruto stepped inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a new adventure, one that would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Naruto walked alongside Rias Gremory, still taking in the sheer magnitude of the world he had found himself in. The Gremory estate was nothing short of magnificent, with its grand architecture and sprawling gardens. As they walked through the halls, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Despite having been to many places in his world, he had never seen anything quite like this. Rias led him through a series of corridors until they reached a large set of double doors. She paused for a moment before pushing them open, revealing a spacious room filled with elegant furniture and decorated with crimson and black, the colors of the Gremory clan. "This is the main lounge where my peerage gathers," Rias explained as she gestured for Naruto to enter. "We'll meet the others here." As Naruto stepped into the room, he immediately noticed two figures already seated inside. The first was a girl with long, dark hair tied in a ponytail, her eyes a striking shade of violet. She was dressed in the same school uniform as Rias, though she exuded a completely different aura, one of mystery and allure. The second figure was a young girl with short blonde hair and innocent green eyes. She had a delicate, almost ethereal presence about her, and she smiled warmly when she saw Rias enter. "Rias?" the blonde girl exclaimed, standing up from her seat. "You're back." Rias smiled and walked over to the girl, giving her a reassuring pat on the head. "Yes, Asia, I'm back. And I've brought someone with me." Asia's eyes widened as she turned her gaze to Naruto. "Oh. Who is this?" Before Rias could respond, the dark-haired girl stood up, her eyes narrowing as she studied Naruto. "He's not from around here, is he?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head, feeling slightly out of place under her intense gaze. No, I'm not. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you." The dark-haired girl's expression softened slightly, and she nodded in acknowledgement. "Akeno Himejima," she introduced herself, her voice smooth and almost musical. "I'm Ria's queen." Rias turned to Naruto, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "Akeno is my second in command, and Asia here is my bishop. The others will be joining us shortly." Naruto nodded, taking in the information. He had learned a bit about the structure of the devil world from Rias on their way to the estate. Apparently, each high-ranking devil had a peerage, a group of loyal followers who served them in various capacities, each with a designated role on a chessboard. It was a unique system, to say the least, but Naruto was nothing if not adaptable. As if on cue, the doors to the lounge opened again, and two more figures entered. The first was a tall, muscular boy with short brown hair and sharp eyes. He carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned warrior, and his presence immediately commanded attention. The second was a petite girl with long white hair and curious cat-like eyes. She moved with a grace that reminded Naruto of a predator stalking its prey. "Issei and Kaneko," Rias said, introducing them as they joined the group. "Issei is my pawn, and Kaneko is my rook." Issei's eyes lit up when he saw Naruto, and he immediately rushed over, extending his hand. "Hey. Nice to meet you, man. You must be the new guy Rias was talking about." Naruto shook his hand, surprised by Issei's enthusiasm. "Yeah, that's me. Naruto Uzumaki." Kaneko, on the other hand, merely nodded in his direction, her expression neutral. "Hello," she said simply before taking a seat on one of the couches. Naruto took a moment to observe the group. They were an interesting mix of personalities, each with their own unique presence. It was clear that Rias had chosen her peerage carefully, surrounding herself with individuals who complemented her strengths and covered her weaknesses. Despite the differences in their appearances and demeanors, there was an undeniable bond between them, a bond that Naruto was beginning to understand all too well. "So," Akeno began, her gaze returning to Naruto. "How did you end up here, Naruto? You don't seem like someone who just wandered into the underworld by accident." Naruto sighed, his mind racing as he tried to piece together the events that had led him to this world. "I'm not entirely sure myself," he admitted. "I was fighting this really powerful enemy in my world, and somehow, I ended up here. It's all kind of a blur." Rias nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It sounds like you've been through a lot. But you're safe here, Naruto. We'll do everything we can to help you find a way back to your world." Naruto felt a warmth in his chest at her words. There was something comforting about Rias, something that made him feel like he could trust her. "Thanks, Rias. I appreciate it." Just then, the doors to the lounge opened once more and a final figure entered. This time, it was a man with a tall, imposing stature and sharp features. His hair was silver and his eyes were a piercing shade of red. He carried himself with a regal air and the room seemed to fall silent as he stepped inside. "Ah, Rias," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "I see you've brought a guest." Rias smiled and gestured toward Naruto. "Yes, brother. This is Naruto Uzumaki. He's not from this world." Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he realized who this man was. "Brother?" he echoed. Rias nodded. "This is my older brother, Surzich's Lucifer." Surzich's studied Naruto for a moment, his gaze intense but not unkind. "Welcome to the underworld, Naruto Uzumaki," he said, inclining his head slightly. "I've heard a lot about you from Rias. It seems you've had quite the journey." Naruto felt a sense of awe as he stood before one of the most powerful devils in the underworld. "It's an honor to meet you," he said, bowing slightly. Surzichas chuckled, a warm almost fatherly sound. The honor is mine, Naruto. Any friend of Rias is a friend of mine. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. As the group settled into their seats, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in a long time. Despite the unfamiliar surroundings, there was something about this place, these people, that felt right. For the first time since he had arrived in this world, he felt a glimmer of hope. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a new adventure, one that would test his strength, his resolve, and his heart in ways he had never imagined. The days following Naruto's arrival at the Gremory estate passed in a blur of training, exploration, and bonding with the members of Rias' peerage. Despite the strange new world he found himself in, Naruto was adapting quickly. His chakra was slowly returning, though he still felt a strange disconnect from the Kyuubi within him. Nevertheless, he kept himself busy, learning more about the underworld and its inhabitants, while forming new friendships along the way. Rias had taken it upon herself to personally oversee Naruto's integration into their world. She was patient with him, explaining the intricacies of the underworld's politics and the delicate balance between the devils, angels, and fallen angels. Naruto found her explanations fascinating, though he often struggled to grasp the full extent of this new world's complexities. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the estate in shades of gold and crimson, Naruto found himself in the training grounds behind the mansion. He was practicing his taijutsu, his movements fluid and precise, a testament to his years of rigorous training. But as he threw punches and kicks at an imaginary opponent, his mind kept drifting back to the events that had led him here. What happened to everyone back home? He wondered. Did they defeat Kaguya? Are they okay? A sense of unease settled in his chest, but he pushed it aside. There was nothing he could do from here, and worrying wouldn't help. All he could do was focus on the present and find a way back to his world when the time came. As he continued his practice, he sensed a presence approaching. Turning around, he saw Akeno walking toward him, her usual serene smile in place. "Training hard, I see," Akeno said, stopping a few feet away from him. "You've been at it for hours." Naruto grinned, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yeah, I've got to keep in shape. Can't let myself get rusty, especially in a place like this." Akeno chuckled softly. "True. But don't push yourself too hard. You're still recovering, after all." Naruto nodded, appreciating her concern. Akeno had been particularly attentive to him since his arrival, often sparring with him and offering guidance on how to harness the strange energy of this world. He found her presence calming, though he couldn't deny the magnetic pull he felt whenever she was around. There was something about her that drew him in, and he wasn't entirely sure what to make of it. Just as he was about to respond, the tranquil atmosphere was shattered by a loud explosion in the distance. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Naruto's instincts immediately kicked in. He exchanged a quick glance with Akeno, who nodded, her expression turning serious. Without a word, they both dashed toward the source of the explosion, their hearts pounding in sync. As they neared the front of the mansion, they were met with a scene of chaos. Several of Ria's servants were scattered across the courtyard, some injured, others unconscious. And standing in the midst of it all was a figure cloaked in dark energy, his wings unfurled and his eyes glowing with malice. Naruto skidded to a stop, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight. The man before him was clearly a fallen angel, but there was something off about him. His energy felt twisted, corrupted in a way that set Naruto's senses on high alert. Akeno stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "Calner," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "What are you doing here?" The fallen angel, Calner, turned his gaze toward Akeno, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "Ah, Akeno Himejima. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Naruto could sense the tension in the air as Akeno's fists clenched at her sides. "You have no business here, Calner. Leave now, and I might let you live." Calner chuckled darkly. "Bold words, little queen. But I'm not here for you. I've come for Rias' Gremory." Naruto's eyes flicked to Akeno, noting the way her expression hardened at the mention of Ria's name. Whoever this Calner was, it was clear that he was no ordinary foe. "You're not getting anywhere near Rias," Akeno growled, electricity crackling around her hands as she prepared to attack. But before she could make a move, Naruto stepped forward, his gaze locked on Calner. "Why are you after Rias?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. Calner's gaze shifted to Naruto, and his smile widened. "And who might you be? A new pawn in Ria's little game?" Naruto's jaw tightened. "I'm not a pawn. And I'm not going to let you hurt my friends." The fallen angel laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "How noble. But you're out of your depth, boy. This isn't your world." Naruto's hands balled into fists at his sides. "Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I'll stand by and let you wreak havoc." Calner's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Very well, then. Let's see what you're made of." Without warning, Calner launched himself at Naruto, his wings propelling him forward with terrifying speed. Naruto barely had time to react, his body moving on instinct as he dodged the attack, narrowly avoiding a blast of dark energy that scorched the ground where he had been standing. Akeno was quick to join the fray, her hands crackling with lightning as she unleashed a barrage of attacks on Calner. But the fallen angel was relentless, deflecting her strikes with ease as he closed in on Naruto once more. Naruto's heart raced as he ducked and weaved, his mind struggling to keep up with the ferocity of the battle. He had faced powerful foes before, but there was something different about this fight, something that made his blood boil with determination. As Calner's attacks grew more aggressive, Naruto felt a familiar surge of energy within him. It was faint, but it was there, his chakra, returning to him in the heat of battle. He could feel the kick stirring within him, its power clawing its way back to the surface. With a roar of defiance, Naruto summoned a Rasengan, the spiraling ball of chakra glowing brightly in his hand. Calner's eyes widened in surprise, but it was too late. Naruto charged forward, slamming the Rasengan into the fallen angel's chest with all his might. The impact sent Calner flying, his body crashing into the ground with a thunderous force. The courtyard shook with the intensity of the blow, and for a moment, everything was still. Naruto stood over Calner, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. The Rasengan had taken more out of him than he had expected, but it had been enough to bring the fallen angel down. Akeno rushed to his side, her eyes wide with concern. "Naruto. Are you okay?" Naruto nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yeah, just a little winded." Calner groaned as he struggled to rise, but before he could make another move, Akeno unleashed a powerful blast of lightning that rendered him unconscious. As the dust settled, Naruto looked around at the damage, his mind racing. This battle had been a wake-up call, a reminder that he was far from invincible in this new world. But it had also shown him that he wasn't alone. He had allies, friends who would fight alongside him no matter the odds. Akeno placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression softening. "You did well, Naruto. Thank you for protecting us." Naruto smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Akeno." She blushed slightly, her usual confident demeanor faltering for a moment. "We're a team. We'll face whatever comes our way together." Naruto nodded, a sense of resolve settling in his heart. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face it no matter what. And as he stood there, surrounded by the remnants of battle, he couldn't help but feel that his journey in this world was only just beginning. The aftermath of the battle with Calner left the Gremory estate in a state of unease. The servants worked tirelessly to repair the damage done to the courtyard, while Rias and her peerage tended to the wounded. Despite their victory, the encounter had shaken them. The fallen angel's sudden appearance and the sheer ferocity of his attack were enough to remind them all of the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the underworld. Naruto, still feeling the aftereffects of the fight, found himself back in the training grounds the following morning. The rising sun cast long shadows across the estate, and the cool morning air was a welcome contrast to the intensity of the previous night's battle. Despite the early hour, Naruto wasn't alone. "Up early again, I see," came a soft familiar voice. Naruto turned to see Asia Argento approaching, her usual gentle smile in place. She carried a small tray with a teapot and 2 cups, her steps light and careful as she made her way toward him. "Yeah," Naruto replied, smiling as she set the tray down on a nearby bench. "Just needed some fresh air, I guess." Asia nodded, pouring the tea with practiced grace. "I thought you might want something to help you relax," she said, offering him a cup. "It's a special blend that Rias recommended. It's supposed to help with stress." Naruto accepted the cup with a grateful nod, taking a sip of the warm fragrant tea. The tension in his muscles began to ease almost immediately, and he let out a contented sigh. "Thanks, Asia. This is really good." Asia beamed, her cheeks flushing with pleasure. "I'm glad you like it. You've done so much for us already, and I wanted to do something for you in return." Naruto shook his head, feeling a bit embarrassed by her praise. "I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone would do." Asia's expression softened, and she sat down beside him on the bench. "You're very humble, Naruto," she said quietly. "But I don't think you realize how much you've already helped us. Last night, if it weren't for you, things could have been much worse." Naruto glanced at her, noting the sincerity in her eyes. There was something about Asia that reminded him of Hinata, her gentle demeanor, her kindness, and the quiet strength that lay beneath the surface. He couldn't help but feel a sense of protectiveness toward her, much like he had with Hinata. "I'm just glad I could help," Naruto said, his voice softening. "You guys took me in without asking for anything in return. The least I can do is protect you." Asia's smile widened, and for a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, sipping their tea as the sun continued to rise. Despite the lingering tension from the battle, there was a peacefulness in the air that Naruto found comforting. It was a rare moment of calm in a world filled with chaos. As they sat together, Asia seemed to gather her thoughts, her hands cradling the teacup in her lap. "Naruto," she began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" Of course, Naruto replied, turning his full attention to her. Asia took a deep breath, her green eyes searching his for reassurance. Do you ever miss your home? Your friends, your world, do you miss them? Naruto's heart ached at the question. Of course he missed his home Konoha, his friends, the life he had fought so hard to protect. But as much as he missed them, he knew that dwelling on those feelings wouldn't help him now. He had to focus on the present, on the new bonds he was forming in this world. Yeah, Naruto admitted, his voice tinged with sadness. I miss them a lot. But I know they're strong. They can take care of themselves. Right now, I have to focus on finding a way back and helping you guys while I'm here. Asia nodded, her expression thoughtful. I understand. It must be hard, being so far from everything you know. Naruto shrugged, trying to appear more nonchalant than he felt. It's not so bad. I've made some good friends here too. Like you, Rias, and the others. You've all made this place feel a little more like home. Asia's eyes brightened at his words, and she reached out to place a hand on his arm. We're all grateful to have you here, Naruto. And we'll do everything we can to help you find your way back. Naruto smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the tea. Thanks, Asia. That means a lot. As the morning continued to unfold around them, Naruto and Asia spent the time talking about their worlds, their experiences, and the bonds they had formed with their respective friends. Naruto found himself opening up to Asia in a way he hadn't expected, sharing stories of his adventures in Konoha, his battles, and the friendships that had shaped him. Asia, in turn, spoke of her own struggles, her time as a nun, the pain of being cast out by the church, and the solace she had found in Rias' peerage. Naruto listened intently, his respect for Asia growing with each passing moment. She had been through so much, yet she remained kind, gentle, and unwavering in her faith. As the conversation drew to a close, Naruto felt a renewed sense of determination. He had found a new family in this world, one that he was willing to protect with everything he had. And as he stood up, stretching his arms toward the sky, he knew that his journey was far from over. Thank you for the tea, Asia, Naruto said, offering her a hand to help her up. And for listening. Asia took his hand, her smile as radiant as the morning sun. Anytime, Naruto. I'm always here if you need someone to talk to. As they made their way back to the mansion, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that his bond with Asia had deepened. She wasn't just a friend, she was someone he cared for deeply, someone he wanted to protect no matter what. And as they entered the mansion, side by side, Naruto knew that the challenges ahead would only bring them closer. But little did he know, the peace they had found was fleeting. The underworld was a place of constant turmoil, and their next trial was just around the corner. The days following Naruto's deepening bond with Asia were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The peace they had shared was a welcome respite, but Naruto knew it wouldn't last forever. He could feel a storm brewing on the horizon, one that would require all his strength to overcome. Rias, ever the vigilant leader, had noticed the subtle shift in Naruto's demeanor. His resolve had hardened, his training had intensified, and there was a new fire in his eyes. It was clear to her that Naruto was ready to uncover more about the power that lay dormant within him, a power that had already begun to awaken during the battle with Calner. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Rias approached Naruto in the mansion's library. The room was bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, the scent of old books filling the air. Naruto was seated at a large oak table, several ancient tomes spread out before him. He had been poring over them for hours, searching for any information that could help him unlock the secrets of his Uzumaki heritage in this world. Still at it, I see, Rias said softly as she approached, her presence immediately drawing Naruto's attention. Naruto looked up from the book he was reading, offering her a tired smile. Yeah, I feel like I'm so close to figuring something out, but it's just out of reach. Rias took a seat beside him, glancing over the pages filled with intricate diagrams and arcane symbols. You've been working hard, Naruto. Maybe it's time you took a break. Naruto shook his head, determination etched on his face. I can't stop now, Rias. There's something here, something important. I can feel it. Rias studied him for a moment, her eyes softening with concern. I understand how you feel, Naruto. But you don't have to do this alone. We're all here to help you. Naruto's gaze dropped to the book in front of him, his fingers tracing the worn edges of the pages. I know and I appreciate it. But this is something I have to do. I need to understand why my chakra feels different here, why the Kyuubi's power is acting so strange. Rias nodded, her expression thoughtful. The Uzumaki clan, they were known for their incredible chakra reserves and their mastery of sealing techniques, correct? Naruto nodded. Yeah, my mom was one of the last of the Uzumaki clan. She taught me a lot about our history, but there's still so much I don't know. And now, in this world, it feels like there's more to my clan's power than I ever realized. Rias reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Whatever secrets your clan holds, we'll uncover them together. You're not alone in this, Naruto. Naruto looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thanks, Rias. That means a lot. Rias smiled warmly, her hand lingering on his shoulder for a moment before she stood up. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. Curiosity piqued, Naruto followed Rias out of the library and through the winding corridors of the mansion. They walked in silence, the only sound the soft echo of their footsteps against the marble floors. Eventually, they reached a heavy wooden door at the far end of a secluded hallway. Rias pushed the door open, revealing a small chamber lit by a single flickering torch. The room was simple, with stone walls and a circular pattern etched into the floor. At the center of the room stood an ancient pedestal, atop which rested a scroll sealed with the emblem of the Gremory clan. This chamber is where we keep some of the most powerful and ancient relics of our clan, Rias explained as she led Naruto inside. But there's one item here that I believe belongs to you. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as Rias picked up the scroll and handed it to him. This was discovered in the underworld centuries ago, long before I was born. It was believed to be a relic from a forgotten era, but no one has ever been able to decipher its contents. Naruto carefully unsealed the scroll, his heart racing with anticipation. As he unfurled it, the parchment began to glow with a soft blue light. Intricate symbols and seals filled the page, but the moment Naruto laid eyes on them, they seemed to rearrange themselves, forming a pattern that he recognized instinctively. This is an Uzumaki sealing technique, Naruto whispered in awe. But it's different from anything I've seen before. Rias watched him closely, her curiosity piqued. What does it say? Naruto's eyes scanned the symbols, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the ancient text. It's a key, he said slowly, realization dawning on him. A key to unlocking the full potential of the Uzumaki clan's power. Rias' eyes widened in surprise. Are you saying this scroll could help you harness your chakra more effectively in this world? Naruto nodded, his excitement growing. I think so. The Uzumaki were known for their sealing techniques, but this is something else. It's like a blueprint for channeling chakra in a way that aligns with the energy of this world. Rias smiled, her heart swelling with pride and admiration for the determined young man before her. Then we'll study it together. We'll figure out how to use this power to help you, Naruto. Naruto grinned, feeling a renewed sense of hope. Thanks Rias. I knew I could count on you. Over the next few days, Naruto and Rias spent every waking moment in the chamber, poring over the scroll and experimenting with the new techniques it revealed. The process was slow and painstaking, but with each breakthrough, Naruto could feel his connection to his chakra growing stronger. As they worked together, Rias couldn't help but notice the change in Naruto. He was more focused, more determined than ever before. But there was also a growing bond between them, a bond that went beyond friendship or camaraderie. It was something deeper, something that neither of them fully understood yet. One evening, as they sat side by side, exhausted from their efforts, Rias turned to Naruto with a soft smile. You're making incredible progress, Naruto. I'm amazed at how quickly you're mastering these techniques. Naruto chuckled, though there was a hint of weariness in his voice. I have a great teacher. Besides, I've got a lot of motivation to get stronger. Ria's smile faltered slightly as she looked into his eyes. Naruto, I know you're focused on finding a way back to your world, but have you ever thought about what might happen if you can't go back? Naruto's expression grew serious as he considered her question. It was something he had tried not to dwell on, but he knew it was a possibility. I have thought about it, he admitted quietly. And I don't know what I'd do. But if it comes to that, I know I'd find a way to make a life here. With all of you. Ria's heart swelled with emotion at his words, and she reached out to take his hand in hers. No matter what happens, Naruto, you'll always have a place here. You're part of our family now. Naruto squeezed her hand, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Thanks Rias. That means more to me than you know. As they sat together in the quiet chamber, the ancient scroll between them, Naruto felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time since arriving in this world, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And with Rias by his side, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. But even as they celebrated their progress, a new threat was beginning to stir in the shadows, one that would test their newfound strength and the bonds they had forged. The days following Naruto's discovery of the Uzumaki sealing techniques were filled with rigorous training and study. With Ria's help, Naruto had begun to master the ancient methods, gradually feeling his connection to his chakra deepen and stabilize. The strange dissonance that had plagued him since his arrival in the underworld was slowly fading, replaced by a sense of control and power that he hadn't experienced before. But with this newfound strength came new challenges not just of the body, but of the heart. As Naruto's bond with Rias deepened, so too did his relationships with Akeno and Asia. Each of them had become an integral part of his life in this world, and the emotions he felt for them were growing stronger by the day. It was a confusing and overwhelming sensation, one that Naruto wasn't entirely sure how to handle. One evening, after another intense training session, Naruto found himself wandering the estate, his mind racing with thoughts of Rias, Akeno, and Asia. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the gardens, and the air was cool and crisp. Naruto walked aimlessly, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling within him. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Akeno, who was carrying a tray with a teapot and 2 cups. She looked up in surprise, her violet eyes sparkling with amusement. "Naruto," she said with a smile, "I was just looking for you. I thought you might like some tea." Naruto rubbed the back of his head, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. I was just thinking." Akeno's smile softened and she gestured toward a nearby bench. "Care to join me? We can talk if you'd like." Naruto nodded, grateful for the company. They sat down on the bench and Akeno poured the tea, her movements graceful and precise. The scent of jasmine filled the air, calming Naruto's restless thoughts. As they sipped their tea in companionable silence, Akeno glanced at Naruto, her expression thoughtful. "You seem troubled, Naruto. Is there something on your mind?" Naruto hesitated, unsure of how to put his feelings into words. "It's complicated," he finally said. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About this world, about all of you and about what I'm supposed to do next." Akeno nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "It's natural to feel that way. You've been through so much in such a short time. But remember, you're not alone in this. We're all here to support you." Naruto smiled, though it was tinged with uncertainty. "I know. And I appreciate that more than I can say. But it's not just about the battles or the training, it's about you, and Rias, and Asia." Akeno's eyes widened slightly, but she remained calm, her expression open and encouraging. "What about us?" Naruto took a deep breath, deciding to be honest. "I care about all of you. A lot. And I don't know what to do with these feelings. I've never been in a situation like this before, where I feel so strongly about more than one person. It's confusing." Akeno's smile returned, gentle and warm. "Love is often confusing, Naruto. It doesn't always follow the rules we expect it to. But that doesn't make your feelings any less real or important." Naruto looked at her, searching her eyes for any hint of judgment, but all he found was understanding. "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked quietly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to ruin the friendships we have." Akeno reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not going to hurt anyone, Naruto. We all care about you too, and we understand that this is new for you. But you don't have to have all the answers right now. Just be honest with yourself and with us. We'll figure it out together." Naruto felt a weight lift from his shoulders at her words. He had been so worried about making the wrong choice, about letting someone down, that he hadn't considered the possibility that they could navigate this together. "Thank you, Akeno," Naruto said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I needed to hear that." Akeno's smile widened and she squeezed his arm gently. "Anytime, Naruto. You're not just a friend to us, you're family. And family sticks together, no matter what." As they finished their tea, the conversation shifted to lighter topics and Naruto found himself relaxing in Akeno's presence. But even as they laughed and talked, he couldn't shake the thought that his feelings for Akeno were growing stronger by the day. The following morning, Naruto joined Rias in the training grounds. The air was crisp and the sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the landscape. Rias was already there, stretching and preparing for their session. "Good morning, Naruto," Rias greeted him with a smile. "Ready for another day of training?" Naruto grinned, feeling his spirits lift at the sight of her. "Always. Let's get started." As they sparred, Naruto couldn't help but admire Ria's grace and strength. She was an incredible fighter, with a sharp mind and a heart full of compassion. He had learned so much from her, not just about the underworld, but about leadership, loyalty, and the importance of trusting in others. After an intense session, they took a break, sitting on the edge of the training field to catch their breath. Rias glanced at Naruto, noticing the contemplative look on his face. "You've been deep in thought lately, Naruto," she observed. "Is something on your mind?" Naruto hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest with her as well. "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about my feelings. For you, for Akeno, for Asia. I don't want to mess things up between us." Ria's expression softened and she reached out to take his hand. "Naruto, I'm glad you're being honest with me. I know this is new and confusing for you, but you don't have to go through it alone. We're all here for you and we'll figure this out together." Naruto squeezed her hand, feeling a rush of affection for the crimson-haired devil who had become such an important part of his life. "Thank you, Rias. I just don't want to hurt anyone. I care about all of you so much." Rias smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "You have a big heart, Naruto. And that's one of the things we all love about you. But love doesn't have to be a burden, it can be a source of strength. We'll take things one step at a time and we'll see where this journey takes us." Naruto nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He didn't have all the answers, but he didn't need to. He had Rias, Akeno, and Asia by his side, and together, they would navigate the complexities of their emotions and the challenges that lay ahead. As the day continued, Naruto found himself reflecting on the bonds he had formed with these incredible women. Each of them had brought something unique and precious into his life, and he knew that he would do whatever it took to protect them. But even as he embraced the support and love of his friends, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest trials were yet to come. The path ahead was uncertain, and the challenges they faced would test not only their strength, but also their hearts. And as the sun set on another day in the underworld, Naruto knew that the journey he had embarked on was only just beginning. The days following Naruto's heartfelt conversations with Akeno and Rias were filled with a sense of newfound clarity. Though he still grappled with the complexity of his emotions, knowing that he wasn't alone in his feelings provided him with a much-needed sense of peace. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, allowing him to focus more on the present and the bonds he was building. Naruto had also noticed a change in the atmosphere around the Gremory estate. The tension from the recent battles seemed to have eased, replaced by a calm that felt almost too perfect. It was as if the entire household was taking a collective breath, enjoying the brief reprieve from the chaos that had been their lives. It was during one of these peaceful days that Rias decided to host a small gathering for her peerage, a chance for everyone to relax and enjoy each other's company. The event was held in the gardens, where the soft glow of lanterns illuminated the carefully manicured lawns, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Naruto arrived early, eager to help with the preparations. He found Asia and Kaneko arranging the tables and setting out refreshments, their movements quick and efficient. "Need any help?" Naruto asked as he approached, smiling at the sight of Asia's delighted expression. "Of course, Naruto," Asia replied, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "We could always use an extra pair of hands." Kaneko nodded in agreement, though her expression remained characteristically stoic. "You can help with the decorations," she said, handing Naruto a box filled with colorful paper lanterns. Naruto set to work, hanging the lanterns from the trees and around the gazebo. As he worked, he couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment. It was a simple task, but one that allowed him to reflect on how far he had come since arriving in this world. By the time the sun had set, the garden had been transformed into a cozy, inviting space. The lanterns cast a warm glow over the gathering, and the soft murmur of conversation filled the air as the members of Rias' peerage arrived one by one. Rias herself was the last to arrive, and Naruto couldn't help but admire her as she entered the garden, her crimson hair shimmering in the lantern light. She was dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, and the smile she wore was one of genuine happiness. "Everything looks wonderful," Rias said as she approached the group, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you all for your hard work." Naruto grinned, feeling a sense of pride in their efforts. "It was a team effort, Rias. We wanted to make sure tonight was special." Ria's smile widened, and she stepped closer to Naruto, her gaze softening. "You've done so much for us, Naruto. I'm glad you're here with us tonight." Naruto felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words, and he nodded, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'm glad too, Rias. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." As the evening continued, the peerage gathered around the table, sharing stories and laughter. The mood was light and relaxed, a stark contrast to the battles and challenges they had faced in recent weeks. For a few hours, they allowed themselves to forget about the dangers lurking in the shadows, focusing instead on the bonds they had forged and the moments of joy they could share. Naruto found himself sitting between Rias and Asia, the two girls chatting animatedly as they enjoyed the feast that had been prepared. Akeno, who was seated across from them, occasionally chimed in with her usual teasing remarks, her eyes sparkling with mischief. At one point, as the conversation turned to lighter topics, Akeno leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Naruto. "Naruto, have you ever considered what you might do if you were to stay in this world permanently?" The question caught Naruto off guard, and he paused, considering his answer. "I've thought about it," he admitted, his tone serious. "I mean, I still want to find a way back to my world, but if that doesn't happen, I'd want to make a life here. With all of you." Rias and Asia exchanged a glance, their expressions softening at his words. Akeno, too, smiled, though there was a hint of something deeper in her eyes, something that Naruto couldn't quite place. "You've already become a part of our family, Naruto," Rias said softly, her hand resting on his arm. "No matter what happens, you'll always have a place with us." Naruto felt a swell of emotion in his chest, and he nodded, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Rias. That means a lot." As the night wore on, the group gradually began to disperse, some heading off to their rooms, while others lingered in the garden, enjoying the tranquility of the evening. Naruto found himself standing near the edge of the garden, gazing up at the stars that dotted the night sky. He was joined a moment later by Asia, who approached quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. "It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. Naruto nodded, smiling at her. "Yeah, it is. It's nice to have a moment like this, after everything that's happened." Asia smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I'm glad we could have this time together." But I can't help but feel that it's only temporary. That something is coming. Naruto's smile faded and he turned to look at her more closely. You're worried, aren't you? Asia nodded, her expression troubled. I don't know why, but I have this feeling like something is about to happen. Something that will change everything. Naruto placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his voice steady and reassuring. Whatever happens, we'll face it together, Asia. You're not alone. Asia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. Thank you, Naruto. I know I can always count on you. As they stood together in the garden, the peaceful night around them, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that Asia was right. The calm they were experiencing felt like the quiet before the storm, a storm that would test everything they had built. And as the stars continued to twinkle overhead, Naruto knew that the challenges ahead would require more than just strength and determination. They would need to rely on the bonds they had forged, the love and trust that had grown between them, to face whatever came their way. For now, though, they would cherish the calm, knowing that it wouldn't last forever. The calm that had settled over the Gremory estate was shattered without warning. It happened on a night like any other, with the moon high in the sky and the stars twinkling brightly above. But what should have been a peaceful evening turned into a nightmare when a massive explosion rocked the mansion, shaking the very foundations of the estate. Naruto was jolted awake by the sound, his instincts kicking in immediately. He leaped out of bed, grabbing his weapons and racing down the hallway toward the source of the disturbance. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and burning debris, and the sound of alarms echoed throughout the mansion. As he reached the main hall, Naruto found Rias, Akeno, and the rest of the peerage already assembled, their expressions grim. The front doors of the mansion had been blown off their hinges, and the cool night air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of destruction. What happened? Naruto demanded, his eyes scanning the damage. We're under attack, Rias replied, her voice tense. An ancient devil, long thought to be dead, has resurfaced. He's after us after the Gremory clan. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward, his fists clenching at his sides. Where is he? I'll take him down. Before Rias could respond, a sinister laugh echoed through the hall, sending chills down their spines. A figure stepped through the rekkage of the doors, his presence commanding and terrifying. He was tall, with a lean, muscular build, and his eyes glowed with a malevolent red light. His long black hair flowed like a river of shadows, and his very aura radiated power and malice. Well, the devil sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. The famous Gremory clan, reduced to hiding behind children. How pathetic. Rias stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. Azazel, she hissed, her voice filled with venom. You were supposed to be dead. Azazel chuckled darkly, his gaze sweeping over the assembled peerage. Dead? Hardly. I've been waiting for the right moment to return, to reclaim what is rightfully mine. Naruto felt a surge of anger at the sight of the ancient devil. There was something about him that set his blood boiling, a deep-seated hatred that he couldn't quite explain. But now wasn't the time for hesitation. They had to protect the estate, protect their family. You're not taking anything from us, Naruto growled, stepping forward to stand beside Rias. I won't let you. Azazel's eyes flicked to Naruto, and a cruel smile spread across his face. Ah, the outsider. I've heard about you, Naruto Uzumaki, the so-called hero from another world. Tell me, boy, do you really think you can stand against me? Naruto's jaw tightened, and he raised his fists, his chakra surging through his body. I've faced worse than you, Azazel. And I'm still standing. Azazel's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. We'll see about that. With a sudden burst of speed, Azazel launched himself at Naruto, his hand crackling with dark energy. Naruto barely had time to react, dodging to the side as Azazel's attack slammed into the ground where he had been standing, leaving a crater in its wake. The battle erupted in an instant, with Rias and the rest of the peerage joining the fray. Akeno unleashed a torrent of lightning, her power crackling through the air as she tried to drive Azazel back. Kaneko and Issei charged forward, their combined strength a force to be reckoned with. Asia stayed back, providing support with her healing magic, ready to assist anyone who needed it. But Azazel was no ordinary opponent. His power was overwhelming, his attacks precise and deadly. He moved with a speed and grace that defied his size, and every blow he landed sent shockwaves through the air. Despite their best efforts, the peerage was being pushed to their limits. Naruto fought with everything he had, channeling the new techniques he had learned from the Uzumaki scroll. But even with his enhanced chakra control and the power of the Kikbi at his side, Azazel was a formidable foe. The ancient devil seemed to anticipate his every move, countering with ruthless efficiency. You're strong, boy, Azazel taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. But strength alone won't save you. Naruto gritted his teeth, refusing to back down. He knew they couldn't afford to lose. This was about more than just protecting the Gremory estate. It was about protecting the people he had come to care about, the family he had found in this world. As the battle raged on, Azazel's attacks grew more intense, his power surging with each passing moment. The mansion shook under the force of his blows, and the ground beneath their feet began to crack and crumble. Rias, sensing that they were running out of time, made a decision. She turned to Naruto, her eyes filled with determination. "Naruto, we need to end this now. We can't keep fighting him like this, he's too strong." Naruto nodded, understanding what she was asking. "What do you need me to do?" Rias hesitated for a moment, then spoke with resolve. "I'm going to channel my full power into one final attack. But I'll need you to hold him off long enough for me to prepare it." Naruto's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't hesitate. "I've got this, Rias. Just give me the signal." Rias nodded, then turned her focus inward, gathering her energy as she began to chant an incantation. The air around her began to hum with power, the temperature dropping as the ground beneath her feet frosted over. Naruto faced Azazel, his determination unwavering. He had to buy Rias enough time, no matter what it took. With a roar, Naruto charged at Azazel, his chakra flaring as he unleashed a barrage of attacks. Azazel sneered, easily deflecting the blows, but Naruto didn't relent. He pushed harder, faster, his movements fueled by a combination of desperation and resolve. For a moment, it seemed as though Azazel had the upper hand, his attacks growing more vicious as he tried to break through Naruto's defenses. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw a flash of light, a signal from Rias. "Now, Naruto." Rias' voice rang out, filled with power. Naruto leaped back, giving Rias the space she needed. In an instant, she unleashed her attack, a massive wave of crimson energy that surged forward, engulfing Azazel in its fury. The ancient devil's eyes widened in shock as the energy consumed him, his form disintegrating under the sheer force of Rias' power. He let out a final, defiant scream before he was completely obliterated, leaving nothing but a scorched mark on the ground where he had stood. The aftermath of the attack left the battlefield eerily quiet. The air was thick with the scent of burnt ozone, and the ground was littered with debris. Naruto, breathing heavily, turned to look at Rias. She was panting, her shoulders heaving with the effort it had taken to summon such immense power. "It's over," Rias said, her voice barely above a whisper. Naruto nodded, his heart still racing. "Yeah, it's over." The rest of the peerage slowly gathered around them, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. Asia immediately rushed to Rias' side, her healing magic already at work to restore her strength. As the reality of their victory began to sink in, Naruto felt a wave of emotions wash over him: relief, exhaustion, and a deep sense of gratitude for the people around him. They had faced an unimaginable threat, and they had come out the other side, stronger and more united than ever. But even as they celebrated their hard-won victory, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The underworld was a place of constant danger, and there were still many challenges ahead. For now, though, they could breathe a little easier, knowing that they had faced the storm and survived. In the days following their battle with Azazel, the Gremory estate slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The damage to the mansion was repaired, and life resumed its usual pace. But beneath the surface, something had changed, something profound and irreversible. Naruto could feel it in the way Rias, Akeno, and Asia interacted with him. The bond they shared had deepened during the fight, forged in the heat of battle, and tempered by the challenges they had overcome together. It was a bond that went beyond friendship, beyond simple camaraderie. It was something more, something that neither Naruto nor the girls could ignore any longer. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Naruto found himself in the gardens, lost in thought. The tranquility of the surroundings was a stark contrast to the turmoil within his heart. He had always been driven by his desire to protect those he cared about, but now, that drive was complicated by feelings he had never fully confronted. He had grown close to Rias, Akeno, and Asia, closer than he had ever expected to. Each of them held a special place in his heart, and the thought of choosing between them felt impossible. But he knew that he couldn't avoid the issue forever. They deserved to know how he felt, and he owed it to them to be honest. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, he heard the soft rustle of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Rias approaching, her crimson hair glowing in the fading light. Her expression was gentle, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that told Naruto she had something important on her mind. "Rias," Naruto greeted her with a small smile, though he couldn't shake the tension that gripped his chest. "What's up?" Rias stopped a few feet away from him, her gaze meeting his with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "Naruto, there's something I need to talk to you about," she said quietly. Naruto's heart skipped a beat, but he nodded, bracing himself for whatever was coming. "I'm listening." Rias took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "I know you've been struggling with your feelings, Naruto. And I want you to know that it's okay. You don't have to make a decision right now, but I need you to know how I feel." Naruto's throat tightened, and he took a step closer to her, his eyes searching hers. "Rias. I love you, Naruto," Rias said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've loved you for a while now. And I know that you care about Akeno and Asia too. But I had to tell you how I feel, because I don't want to lose you." Naruto felt his heart swell with emotion at her words. He had known, on some level, that Ria's feelings for him were deeper than friendship, but hearing her say it out loud was something else entirely. It was both a relief and a source of conflict. "Rias, Naruto began, struggling to find the right words. "I care about you too. A lot. But I also care about Akeno and Asia. I don't want to hurt any of you, and I don't want to make the wrong choice." Ria smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "I understand, Naruto. And I want you to know that no matter what, I'll support whatever decision you make. But I had to be honest with you, because you mean so much to me." Naruto felt a lump in his throat, and he reached out to take her hand in his. "Thank you for telling me, Rias. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise you, I'll always be here for you. No matter what." Rias squeezed his hand, her smile softening. "That's all I needed to hear, Naruto. Thank you." As they stood together, the moment was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Naruto turned to see Akeno and Asia walking toward them, their expressions a mix of determination and concern. It was clear that they, too, had something on their minds. "Naruto," Akeno began, her voice calm but serious. "We need to talk." Naruto's heart pounded in his chest, and he nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Yeah, I figured." Akeno exchanged a glance with Asia, who nodded in encouragement before stepping forward. "Naruto, we know this isn't easy for you," Asia said gently. "And we don't want to put any pressure on you. But like Rias, we need you to know how we feel." Akeno's eyes met Naruto's, and for the first time, he saw vulnerability in her that she rarely showed. "I've grown to care about you more than I ever expected, Naruto," she admitted. "You're kind, strong, and you've brought something into my life that I didn't even know I was missing. I love you, Naruto. And I want to be with you." Asia stepped closer, her green eyes filled with sincerity. "And I love you too, Naruto. You've always been there for me, protecting me and supporting me. I don't know what I'd do without you." Naruto felt his heart twist at their words. He had known that this moment would come, but it didn't make it any easier. These were three incredible women, each of whom had touched his heart in a way that no one else ever had. How was he supposed to choose between them? He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You're all so important to me, and the last thing I want to do is hurt any of you." Rias, Akeno, and Asia exchanged glances, and for a moment, it seemed as though they were communicating without words. Then, Rias stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Naruto," she said gently, "you don't have to choose." Naruto blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" Rias smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "We've talked about this, the three of us. And we all agree if you feel the same way about all of us, then we're willing to share. We don't want to lose you, Naruto. And if this is the only way we can be together, then we're willing to make it work." Naruto's eyes widened in shock. He had never even considered the possibility, but as he looked at the three women before him, he realized that they were serious. They were willing to share him, if it meant they could all be together. I don't know what to say," Naruto stammered, his mind racing. "Are you sure? I mean, it's a lot to ask." Akeno stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "We're sure, Naruto. We've thought about this, and we're willing to try. But it's up to you. If you don't think it's possible, we'll understand." Naruto looked at each of them in turn, his heart filled with a mix of emotions: gratitude, love, and a deep sense of responsibility. He knew that this was an unconventional solution, but it was one that would allow him to be with the people he cared about most. I think we can make it work," Naruto finally said, his voice filled with determination. "If you're all willing to try, then so am I." Rias, Akeno, and Asia all smiled, relief and joy evident in their expressions. They had made a decision that would allow them to be together, despite the challenges they would face. As they stood together in the garden, the sun setting behind them, Naruto felt a sense of peace wash over him. This was a love worth fighting for, a love that would require effort, understanding, and compromise. But it was a love that he was willing to fight for, with everything he had. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Naruto knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with love, adventure, and the promise of a future they would create together. The days following Naruto's and the girl's decision to be together were filled with a sense of renewed purpose and determination. The bond they shared had only grown stronger, and it gave Naruto a new source of strength, the strength he knew he would need for the challenges ahead. The peace they had fought so hard to maintain was fragile, and they all knew that a final confrontation was looming on the horizon. The underworld had been in a state of unrest ever since Azazel's defeat. Rumors of an even greater threat began to circulate, a force that had been biding its time, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment had arrived, and it was clear that their enemy intended to strike at the very heart of the Gremory clan. It was on a night much like the one when Azazel had attacked that the final battle began. The Gremory estate was quiet, the air thick with tension. Naruto, Rias, Akeno, and Asia were gathered in the main hall, each of them sensing that something was coming, something they couldn't avoid. Naruto's senses were on high alert, his connection to his chakra and the Kyuubi stronger than ever. The training he had undergone, coupled with the knowledge he had gained from the Uzumaki scroll, had prepared him for this moment. But even with all his strength, he knew that this battle would test him in ways he had never been tested before. Without warning, the ground beneath them began to shake. The walls of the mansion trembled, and a low, ominous rumble echoed through the halls. Naruto was on his feet in an instant, his instinct screaming at him to prepare for the worst. "They're here," Rias said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. Naruto nodded, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the source of the disturbance. "Stay close. We'll face this together." As if in response to his words, the front doors of the mansion exploded inward and a wave of dark energy surged into the hall. The force of the blast sent debris flying, and Naruto barely had time to shield Rias and the others from the impact. When the dust settled, a figure stepped through the shattered remains of the door. He was tall and imposing, his presence radiating power and malice. His eyes glowed with a fiery red light, and his skin was as black as the void, swirling with dark energy. This was no ordinary devil, this was a being of pure darkness, a force that had been waiting in the shadows for centuries. "So, the infamous Gremory clan and their pet from another world," the figure sneered, his voice a deep resonant growl. "I've waited a long time for this moment." Rias stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "Who are you? What do you want?" The dark figure smiled, a cruel twisted smile. "I am Zagan, the true ruler of the underworld. I was sealed away long ago by the ancestors of your pathetic clan. But now, I have returned to reclaim my throne and plunge this world into eternal darkness." Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. Zagan's power was immense, far greater than anything they had faced before. But he refused to back down. They had come too far, fought too hard, to let everything be taken away now. "We're not going to let you do that," Naruto declared, his voice firm. "This world belongs to the people who live in it, not to monsters like you." Zagan laughed, the sound echoing through the hall like a death knell. "You think you can stop me, boy? You're nothing compared to my power. But if you wish to die alongside these weaklings, so be it." With a wave of his hand, Zagan unleashed a torrent of dark energy, the force of it tearing through the hall like a hurricane. Naruto, Rias, Akeno, and Asia barely had time to react, each of them using their abilities to deflect the attack. But even as they fought back, it was clear that Zagan's power was overwhelming. Naruto gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he tried to think of a way to turn the tide. They couldn't keep fighting like this, Zagan was too strong, too relentless. They needed to find a weakness, something they could exploit. As the battle raged on, Naruto suddenly remembered the Uzumaki scroll, the key to unlocking the full potential of his clan's power. There was a technique he had been studying, one that could amplify his chakra and channel it in a way that could rival even the strongest of foes. But it was risky. The technique required perfect control, and any mistake could have catastrophic consequences. Still, it was their only chance. "Rias, Akeno, Asia," Naruto called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I need you to cover me. I'm going to try something, but it's going to take everything I have." Rias, Akeno, and Asia exchanged a glance, then nodded in unison. They knew what was at stake, and they trusted Naruto with their lives. "Do what you have to do, Naruto," Rias said, her voice filled with unwavering support. "We'll hold him off." Naruto took a deep breath, centering himself as he focused on the technique he had learned. He could feel his chakra surging within him, the energy building as he prepared to unleash it. The Kyuubi stirred within him, its power merging with his own as he began the incantation. Around him, Rias, Akeno, and Asia fought with everything they had, their combined abilities a dazzling display of strength and coordination. They pushed Zagan back, giving Naruto the time he needed to complete the technique. As the final words of the incantation left his lips, Naruto felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced. The air around him crackled with power, and a blinding light enveloped him, radiating outward in waves. Zagan's eyes widened in shock as he felt the immense pressure of Naruto's power. "What is this?" he roared, his voice tinged with fear. Naruto stepped forward, his entire being glowing with the combined power of his chakra and the Kyuubi. "This is the end for you, Zagan. You're not going to hurt anyone ever again." With a final roar, Naruto unleashed the full force of the technique, a massive wave of energy that surged towards Zagan with unstoppable force. The Dark Lord tried to defend himself, but the power was too great, his defenses shattered under the onslaught, and the energy engulfed him completely. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The entire hall was bathed in light, the energy crackling and surging as it overwhelmed Zagan. And then, with a final earth-shaking explosion, the light vanished, leaving behind only silence. When the dust settled, Zagan was gone, obliterated by the sheer force of Naruto's power. The Gremory estate, though damaged, still stood and the members of the peerage were safe. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body trembling from the exertion. He had done it, they had done it. The threat to the underworld had been vanquished and peace had been restored. Rias, Akeno, and Asia rushed to his side, their faces filled with relief and concern. "Naruto." Rias cried, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay?" Naruto looked up at her, a tired but triumphant smile on his face. "Yeah, I'm okay. We did it, Rias. We won." Akeno placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with pride. "You were amazing, Naruto. You saved us all." Asia, tears of joy in her eyes, wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you, Naruto. We couldn't have done this without you." Naruto leaned into their embrace, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. They had faced the ultimate challenge, and they had come out the other side, stronger and more united than ever. As they sat together in the ruins of the battle, the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon, casting the world in a warm golden light. It was a new day, a day filled with the promise of a brighter future. And as Naruto looked at the faces of the people he loved, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because they were not just a team, they were a family. The dawn that broke after their victory over Zagan was more than just the beginning of a new day, it marked the start of a new era for the Gremory clan and for Naruto. The battle had been hard-fought and the scars of that conflict were still fresh, but the sense of relief that washed over the estate was palpable. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, stronger than ever before. In the days that followed, the Gremory estate was a hive of activity. The damage caused by the battle was extensive, but with everyone working together, the repairs were swift. The peerage members, along with the household staff, labored tirelessly to restore the mansion to its former glory. Even Naruto, despite his exhaustion, threw himself into the work, eager to help in any way he could. But it wasn't just the physical repairs that needed attention. The emotional toll of the battle had left its mark as well. The entire peerage had been pushed to their limits, and while they were all relieved to have survived, there was an unspoken understanding that things would never be quite the same again. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the estate in a warm golden light, Naruto found himself walking through the gardens. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze provided a soothing backdrop to his thoughts. Despite the beauty of his surroundings, Naruto's mind was elsewhere, on the events of the past few weeks and on the future that now stretched out before him. He had always been a person of action, someone who lived in the moment and dealt with problems as they arose. But now, for the first time in a long time, he found himself contemplating what came next. He had made a home here in the underworld, formed bonds that were as deep as any he had back in Konoha. But with Zagan defeated, the question of what he was meant to do now loomed large in his mind. As he walked, lost in thought, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Rias approaching, her expression soft and contemplative. She joined him at his side, and together they continued to walk in silence for a few moments, neither of them feeling the need to speak. Finally, Rias broke the silence, her voice gentle. "You've been quiet these past few days, Naruto. Is something on your mind?" Naruto sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I guess I've just been thinking about everything that's happened. It's been a lot to process." Rias nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "It has. We've all been through so much. But I'm glad that we came through it together." Naruto smiled, though it was tinged with a hint of uncertainty. "Me too. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I mean, I've always had a goal, something to fight for. But now I'm not sure." Rias stopped walking and turned to face him, placing a hand on his arm. "Naruto, you don't have to figure it all out right now. You've done so much already, saved us, protected us, become a part of our family. Whatever you decide to do next, we'll support you." Naruto looked into her eyes, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "Thanks, Rias. That means a lot. But what about you? What's next for you and the clan?" Rias smiled, though there was a touch of sadness in her expression. "We'll rebuild, of course. There's still so much work to be done, but I'm confident we can restore everything to the way it was. And beyond that, well, I suppose we'll just have to see what the future holds." Naruto nodded, his thoughts drifting back to the bonds he had formed here, bonds that were stronger than he had ever imagined possible. "I've been thinking about that too," he admitted. "About staying here, with all of you. I mean, this place has become my home, and you're my family now." Ria's smile widened, and she stepped closer, her hand slipping into his. "You'll always have a place here, Naruto. No matter what." Naruto felt a sense of peace wash over him at her words, and he squeezed her hand in return. "I'm glad to hear that, Rias. Because I think I want to stay." Ria's eyes sparkled with joy, and she leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then stay, Naruto. Stay with us. We'll build a future together, all of us." As they stood together in the garden, the weight of uncertainty seemed to lift from Naruto's shoulders. He had always been driven by his desire to protect those he cared about, and now he realized that he could continue to do that here, in this world. He didn't need to return to Konoha to find a purpose. His purpose was here, with Rias, Akeno, Asia, and the rest of the peerage. Later that evening, the entire peerage gathered in the main hall, where they shared a meal and reflected on their journey. The atmosphere was warm and filled with laughter, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the room during their last battle. It was a celebration of their victory, but also a celebration of the bonds they had forged. Akeno, always the teasing one, raised her glass in a toast. To Naruto, our hero from another world, who saved us all and decided to stay. The others cheered, their faces alight with happiness, and Naruto couldn't help but laugh, feeling a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in a long time. As the evening wore on, Naruto found himself standing by the window, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. Asia joined him, her expression soft as she looked up at him. "Are you happy, Naruto?" she asked quietly. Naruto turned to her, a genuine smile on his face. "Yeah, Asia. I am. I think I've finally found where I belong." Asia's smile was radiant and she reached out to take his hand. "I'm so glad, Naruto. You've brought so much light into our lives. We're all so grateful to have you with us." Naruto squeezed her hand, feeling a swell of affection for the kind-hearted girl who had become such an important part of his life. "And I'm grateful to be here, Asia. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." As the night drew to a close, the peerage members slowly began to retire to their rooms, their hearts light and their spirits high. Naruto lingered in the hall for a moment longer, watching as Rias, Akeno, and Asia exchanged goodnights and headed off to their respective chambers. He stood there, reflecting on everything that had led him to this point, the battles, the friendships, the love he had found in this world. And as he finally turned to head to his own room, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same determination and courage that had brought him this far. Because he was no longer just Naruto Uzumaki, the hero from another world. He was a member of the Gremory clan, a part of a family that had accepted him for who he was, and he knew that together, they could overcome anything. The weeks following the final battle with Zagan brought a sense of peace and stability to the Gremory estate that had been absent for far too long. The mansion had been fully restored, the gardens were in full bloom, and the days were filled with laughter and camaraderie. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, one that allowed everyone to finally breathe and enjoy the fruits of their hard-won victory. For Naruto, this time of peace was both a blessing and an opportunity for reflection. He had come to this world by chance, thrust into a new life filled with dangers and uncertainties. But in the midst of the chaos, he had found something he hadn't even known he was searching for: a family, a place where he truly belonged. One crisp autumn morning, Naruto found himself in the library, surrounded by ancient tomes and scrolls. He had spent countless hours here, learning about the underworld, honing his skills, and discovering more about his own abilities. But today, his mind wasn't on training or research. Instead, he was thinking about the future, his future with Rias, Akeno, and Asia. As he pondered over the paths that lay before him, the door to the library creaked open, and Rias stepped inside, her presence instantly drawing Naruto's attention. She smiled as she approached, her crimson hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall of fire. "Mind if I join you?" Rias asked, her tone light and playful. Naruto grinned, gesturing to the chair beside him. "Not at all. I could use some company." Rias took a seat, her eyes scanning the shelves of books that lined the walls. "You've spent a lot of time in here lately," she observed. "Is there something on your mind?" Naruto hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what comes next. For all of us." Rias turned to him, her expression curious. "What do you mean?" Naruto sighed, running a hand through his hair as he tried to organize his thoughts. "We've been through so much together. We've fought battles, faced impossible odds, and come out the other side stronger. But now that things have calmed down, I can't help but wonder what the future holds for us." Ria's eyes softened, and she reached out to take his hand in hers. "Naruto, whatever the future holds, we'll face it together. You've become such an important part of our lives, and I can't imagine a future without you in it." Naruto smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "I feel the same way, Rias. You, Akeno, Asia, you've all become my family. And I want to stay here with you for as long as I can." Ria's smile widened and she leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll build a future together, one where we can all be happy." As they sat together in the quiet of the library, the door creaked open again and Akeno and Asia entered, their expressions bright and cheerful. "Looks like we're not the only ones who wanted some quiet time," Akeno teased, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Asia giggled, her presence as calming as always. "We didn't mean to interrupt, but we wanted to spend some time with you too, Naruto." Naruto chuckled, feeling a sense of contentment as they joined him and Rias. "You're not interrupting at all. I'm glad you're here." As they settled into the cozy space, the four of them began to talk, sharing stories, dreams, and hopes for the future. The conversation was light and filled with laughter, a testament to the bond they had forged through their trials and triumphs. At one point, Akeno glanced at Naruto, her expression thoughtful. "Naruto, do you ever think about what life would be like if you hadn't ended up in this world?" Naruto paused, considering her question. "I do, sometimes," he admitted. "But I don't dwell on it. I've come to realize that everything happens for a reason. If I hadn't ended up here, I wouldn't have met any of you. And that's something I wouldn't trade for anything." Asia smiled, her green eyes shining with affection. "We're so glad you're here, Naruto. You've changed our lives in so many ways." Rias nodded in agreement, her hand still holding Naruto's. "You've brought us closer together, Naruto. And because of you, we've all become stronger." Naruto felt a swell of emotion in his chest, and he looked at each of them in turn, his heart filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You've all given me a place to belong, and that's something I'll always be thankful for." As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room, Naruto felt a sense of peace settle over him. This was where he was meant to be, with the people he loved, in a world that had become his home. The hours passed quickly, filled with conversation and companionship. And as the day began to draw to a close, the four of them made their way to the garden, where the golden hues of the setting sun painted the sky in vibrant colors. They stood together, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the evening sky. It was a moment of perfect serenity, one that spoke of new beginnings and the promise of a future filled with love and adventure. Rias, Akeno, and Asia each took a step closer to Naruto, their hands finding his as they stood side by side. There was no need for words, the bond they shared spoke for itself, a bond that would only grow stronger with time. As the stars continued to fill the sky, Naruto knew that he had found his place in this world. It wasn't the place he had expected, nor the one he had originally sought. But it was the place where he belonged, surrounded by the people who had become his family. And as they stood together, their hearts full and their spirits high, Naruto couldn't help but smile. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, united by the bonds of love and friendship that had brought them to this moment. Because in the end, it wasn't the battles or the victories that mattered most. It was the bonds they had forged along the way, the bonds of the heart that would last a lifetime. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.